So we'll have moments where we feel like we can't sit and concentrate on the task at hand. We can't maintain any focus. So what are some supplemental and nutritional strategies we can utilize to help us to enhance or maintain attention? So before we dive into that, there are two main systems we have to understand in order to target those specific portions of the brain that then have the influence on our attention. And one is the cholinergic system, and the other is the dopaminergic system. And for one, the dopaminergic system is exactly how it sounds. It's effectively the system in the brain that controls the release of the hormone dopamine. It's often known as a neuromodulator, but effectively it plays a role in the mesolimbic reward system, which influences our feelings or it helps us to perceive certain activities as pleasurable. And this is exactly the same network that's targeted in ADHD medication like Adderall, modafinil, Ritalin. All are products that in varying capacities and various sort of mechanisms of action combat the dopaminergic system. And either that's through the release of more dopamine or through the reduced reuptake of that sort of hormone from receptor sites in the body. So then there's the cholinergic system, and the cholinergic system primarily is focused around the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which is typically used not just in the brain but across the body to propagate nerve signals across synaptic membranes. And so the theory is by increasing the quantity or the availability of both those products, we can influence our abilities to remain focused on specific tasks, increase attention, increase focus. So in terms of the products themselves, the dosages of which I've provided in the description here, there's a few kind of main products. The first is caffeine. And L-theanine, a very similar product that's often seen in green tea. But caffeine helps to stimulate not only norepinephrine and adrenaline by increasing energy, but also it has some minor stimulatory effects on the dopamine system. But not so interesting as a kind of product. We all know that, or we all tend to rely on those kinds of things like coffee. But an additional example is iron. So iron plays a cofactor role in the synthesis of dopamine and norepinephrine, and so it's important to ensure we're getting enough of that in our diet, and particularly for females, as things like menstruation tend to have an impact on the quantities of diet of iron in our sort of bodies, and deficiencies tend to be more common in females than males, so it's important to ensure we're getting enough. Then there's a few other examples when we think about targeting the cholinergic system. Effectively what we want to do is intake more choline through our diet, and there's two interesting substances that are out there in the market at the moment. One is alpha GPC, which is typically being included in a lot of nootropic type substances or supplements in the market, but it's very well researched in its ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. And the blood-brain barrier is a very small or intricate network of narrow capillaries that surround the brain and prevent potentially harmful large molecules like viruses, etc., from entering the circulation of the brain. And so by intaking alpha GPC, we increase the volume or availability of choline, one of the constituent parts of the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, from entering the brain. And then also another example is through the intake of some products that are becoming particularly more interesting, but there's some regulatory issues with them. The racetam, specifically Nupept, is quite a well-researched product in its ability to reduce the symptoms of late onset Alzheimer's. And then the other side of the coin, we have fish oils, and specifically within fish oils, there's EPAs and DHAs, and the quantities and constituent parts of those have been shown to have significant effects on increasing focus, especially in young people. There's a lot of data that's been done in children for this specific purpose, so it's worth keeping an eye on those. And of course, they have general neural function benefits when it comes to maintenance of cell membranes, etc. And then finally, L-tyrosine and Korean ginseng are two distinct products that have had a particular focus recently in the market. L-tyrosine is typically marketed and included in energy drinks because of its effects on both the norepinephrine and dopaminergic systems. And then additionally, with Korean ginseng, there's some patchy data, but it's always worth keeping an eye on those. But something that I have to stress is that I'm not a medical doctor. Always worth checking with your physician before initiating or taking a new product, and dosages are always individualized and should be done so based on your own innate biology. But before I go, I'd like to point everyone towards a podcast that Professor Andrew Huberman did on this very topic. He's a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine, and he did a podcast that deep dives into the history and medication of ADHD and the dopaminergic system. So if you're interested, I've provided the link in the description above. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the content, and please do let me know if you enjoyed and would like to see more of this kind of stuff. Thanks.